what we did is we supported practices around the country in either following what they normally would do or helping them have knowledge about and the opportunity to use, if they wanted, under their own choice, evidence-based care for depression, psychotherapy for depression, medication management, case management, outreach, and so forth. But it was entirely up to those organizations what they would do, how they would do it, given some introduction, like today, from us. And we then followed clients of these organizations. It turns out we followed them for 10 years. They had training over about a 6-month period to try to make a difference if they wanted to. And you might imagine that those organizations did not expect to have any kind of long-term effect on clients, especially over 10 years. But they did. Just from hearing about and engaging in and doing their best within their normal scope of practice to use their heart and their resident expertise to figure out how to use these toolkits and move forward. And we actually had been advised in this federally funded research study at that time not to include ethnic minority populations because there were no studies showing at that time that evidence-based treatment for minorities was effective for minorities because no one had ever studied it. And we said, this doesn't make sense to us. There's no reason to think it won't be effective just because it hasn't been studied. We are going to over-include ethnic minorities in the study and find out what happens when you improve care and give information and a fair chance at care. So we actually found out, you see on this particular slide, if you can see it in the light blue is what happened to people who happened to go through the practice in their community that had been exposed to this information and these toolkits, and what happened to them over a 5-year period of time. At the end of that 5 years, if they were African American, that's the light blue, Latino, or white, and you see in the gray area or beige, whatever that color is, what would normally happen to them in their usual practice without that practice taking the time to learn about these toolkits and consider how to use them. And you can see that the whites were doing pretty well 5 years later who had been initially depressed, regardless. They actually were helped, and they were especially helped to get better quicker. But at the end of 5 years, they were doing, reasonably well. The African Americans would have been doing very poorly without this additional assistance, but they caught up, and in fact, they had the best outcomes of any ethnic group in the study by the end of 5 years. And Latinos also had catch-up. So that's a way of saying there would have been already, if you look at the gray endpoints, a disparity in outcomes for minorities compared to whites that got either significantly reduced or actually overcome simply by information and agencies having a chance to consider under their own terms what of that they wanted to use. I think that's a pretty profound... Am I talking too much? Yes.
No, I just want to translate community language, what he just said, quickly. QI stands for quality improvement, okay? So the point that this is a very, very important point, that if you do depression care a little bit better, work using an evidence-based toolkit and things that we know help improve depression care, interventions at 5 years and 10 years, families are staying together. People that get care for depression, vulnerable families staying together. People are staying in their jobs. People are able to live normal lives. So it's huge. In watching people, you don't see research that looks at people at 5 years and 10 years very often. So what we're saying is that doing depression care a little bit better makes a huge difference, especially for minority communities.
And thank you for reminding me that one of the big surprises in this prior project is we found an effectiveness approach to supporting agencies and moving forward on depression care, not only in their health, but in their individual personal economic situation. So at that time of this project, the national unemployment rate was 7%. Now it's 12% or something like that. And in California, it's higher. So this approach to having agencies consider how they wanted to improve depression care reduced unemployment in the depressed population by 7 percentage points, which was the national unemployment rate. In other words, you protected the depressed population from the national unemployment rate simply by the agencies learning about what were the approaches that they could potentially use to help people. So that is what I wanted to share with Loretta. That's why I took her to lunch, because my question was, well, it's one thing to take this to practices that have a lot of financial resources. It's another thing to, given that the minorities were especially benefiting and overcoming a disparity, how do you get this, both the information and the resources available in underserved communities of color in today's world? And that's when she began teaching me over the last 7 years about community engagement and partnering directly in communities, and we transformed our whole research environment to follow that set of principles, and we did that. So in a sense, we got engaged. Retta, would you marry me?
First, I have to be engaged to you, and you know what engagement. How many people know what engagement means? How many people in this room have ever been engaged? You've had a ring on your finger, right? Or you gave someone a ring, right? And what happened when you did that? Tell me. Made a commitment. What else did you do? Came together. You changed some behaviors, didn't you? Changed some of your friends too, didn't you? Decided, went to bed. That's a good one. You also did some things like, I love it. You also did some things like asked each other, well, we're going to have dinner tonight. What shall we eat? So you actually talked to each other. You did better communications, right? And then what was your plan? The plan during the engagement was to do what? Get married. And the only way you can get married is actually come together and actually work in a commitment, work in an engaged fashion, plan things together so that ultimately you'll have something that's going to last a lifetime, maybe. And I say maybe because the divorce rate is a little high. But, I can't help that. But I think that together, if you think about engagement and you think about how to engage in this project, how to engage with your partners, how to work with them together to plan something so that you can have a long-term outcome. And our outcome always is service to the people. So, thank you for engaging. When are we going to get married? Your wife would not allow it.
She has already blessed our
I know she's blessed our relationship and said that I have him more than she does at times.
And she's glad of it. No. That's gallows humor.